Okay.
All right,
Okay.
so the person we're talking to today lived all over the world, worked all over the world. You see that beautiful background behind him. He's in Colorado now. We'll ask about that. But fortunately for Cleveland, Northeast Ohio, Jim Cookinham spent some quality years here and really changed the tech community of Cleveland forever. So welcome, Jim. It's great to see you, even
Thank
over
you.
Zoom. Now, we could go on forever talking about some of your experience. You have been everywhere. I mean, you spent like 8 years in Mallorca as a kid. You've
Right.
been all over the world. But let's get into some of your tech stuff. And I encourage people to read Jim's profile at clevelandseniors.com, and I'll provide a link there to see just some of the stuff he did as a kid. And well, let's get into, you wanted to be in the Naval Academy, for example.
Yeah.
Why was that?
Well, that's a good question I've always asked. When I lived in well, first of all, my father was a Navy officer, so that starts out. Then I lived in Mallorca, and I never came back. I didn't come back to the United States for 7 years, and the only contact I had is when American ships came in, and here are these aircraft carriers and battleships, and the officers on board knew my father was an officer, and they would send jeeps out with sailors to drive us around, and so I just thought being a fighter pilot on an aircraft carrier was the best thing to do in the world. As it turns out, I did not do that, but that's just because I had 20/25 in my left eye when I was a senior, so I went to submarines. Yeah.
But you did. I know you had a interesting interview when you did get into stuff. You got into heavy duty nuclear stuff, and
Yeah.
wasn't there a famous guy who interviewed you that we've all heard of?
Sure, Admiral Rickover. I mean, all of us at that point, every officer was interviewed by Admiral Rickover, and I think he did the interviews in part. You were interviewed 3 times by 3 of his staff members before he interviewed you. So I think in many cases the choice was probably made. But I think it seemed like he just wanted to do something outrageous for the history books. And so everybody's got their story about how they were uh, handled by Admiral Rickover, and it wasn't very nice. So, but I think he's trying to set up a legacy, which he did.
Yeah, yeah. So for whatever reason, I mean, I could never do it. I'm too claustrophobic, but you chose submarines.
Yeah,
Why?
money,
Really?
money.
Like hazard
Ha-
pay?
Hazardous duty pay. I think it was $385 a month or something. I remember one time my mother asked me that same question, and I told her, and she said, "Look, I'll pay you the $385 a month. Do not do that."
I know you've got some great stories about being on the ice and all, and hopefully we'll get to them another time. But
Yeah.
as you learned, you got certified in nuclear stuff, and you worked for Westinghouse, and you ended up in Pennsylvania, and you were there around the 3 Mile Island time, right?
I was the site manager for Westinghouse of the shipping port, the Beaver Valley nuclear plant, when 3 Mile Island happened in Pennsylvania. So yes, in fact, I remember I was actually at my getting my MBA at University of Pittsburgh at that time, and I remember when I took finals, I had so many phone calls and so much stuff going on. The dean had to lend me his office so I could be on the phone while I was doing my finals. So it was, yeah, quite a experience.
So then from Pittsburgh, you came a little west and you started working for Cleveland Thermal. What was that
Right.
all about?
Well, Cleveland Thermal is the district steam system and now district cooling system in Cleveland, and it's been around for 100 years. And Cleveland Electric Illuminating at that time wanted to get rid of it, so it was sold to a private outfit. And I first went up as director of engineering to help them establish how we ran those two. There were 2 plants connected by 20 miles of pipe, and my experience on the submarine was very similar to running a plant, although one was nuclear and one was coal, but same kind of stuff.
All right. So like I say, there's all kinds of great stories about your early career and stuff. But let's jump to 1981, and
Yeah.
for us on August 12th, 1981, that kind of changed the world. The
Yeah.
5150, the IBM PC.
Yeah.
You and your better half, and she really is your better half. You'll be the first to admit it. Did something kind of revolutionary there. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I had when I was a project manager for Westinghouse after 3 Mile Island, we were forced by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to make some big changes on our nuclear plants, the way they were controlled. And so we had these projects that we had to get done immediately to take like 2,000 inputs and make a real-time video display. There was an octagon. If it was octagonal, everything was okay. And these were 2,000 inputs that came in. So to do the programming to do that, I was the project manager for the first one to do. And all of a sudden, I had all these geeks telling me what they were doing, and I had no clue what they were doing. Nothing. And I thought, oh man, I am so far out of this. So I thought I better stick my nose into stuff. And then, like you said, when the IBM came out, all of a sudden these things that had been toys, Apples and Radio Shacks, and became real because IBM gave it the blessing. So Cindy and I started a thing called the International PC Owners. I ordered an IBM PC from the Sears and Roebuck store that sold them in Chicago, and they sent it to me. And we started writing the first newsletter written on the IBM. So there's the first publication written on the IBM PC. And all the new software and all the new hardware would be sent to us for review. Of course, I'm a project manager running a nuclear plant at this time, so it was kind of stressful, and it was weekends. And then we had a software exchange. If you wrote a program in BASIC, then you'd send it to me, and I had a list of other programs, and I would send you 5 free programs, and then that would go up on the list. If you wanted to buy them, I don't know if they were $5 a piece or $1 a piece, very, very cheap. And most of them were pretty crummy. If they were really crummy, then I didn't put them up. But, we had chess and we had checkers, and I could look at the code, the basic code, and think, how do you program this stuff? Oh my God. But anyway, so it familiarized me with that world, and I fell in love with it. I loved it. The only problem is I had to earn a living, so I just couldn't mess around with computers all day. But
do you remember any of the specs of that first IBM PC you had?
Oh yeah, it had 160K. We talked about this before. You said it was 320, and I told you it was. I know.
Better bring that up. Huh?
160K, and it was like $350 for this little piece of crap. So the first one I bought had 16K of memory. One floppy drive, no hard drive. They didn't have hard drives, and it was, if you wanted to run software, you had to stick the floppy in with the software and load the software, then take that floppy out, and then put a new floppy in to save anything you did on it. You could also plug in a cassette recorder in the back if you wanted to record your stuff on that cassette recorder. But it was, it was $3,500 or something for the whole thing.
You know how young people's minds are blown by hearing things like that, the cassette recorder and the cost of it and the size. It's incredible. It's not that long ago.
No, it's not that long ago. And I think the programming skills required to do some of that stuff when the programs were so tight, you didn't have that much space. You had to really be careful. Now, and I'm not knowledgeable enough to really know exactly how they do it, but I don't think they're that worried about space. Sometimes speed probably enters in later on, but yeah, I loved it. It was so cool, and to have watched that change, the offices. You think about it, offices had no PCs, nobody knew what VisitCalc was, nobody knew what a database was. And you think, man, these are senior managers that had no idea. In fact, at Westinghouse, we had 2 Cray 1s. There were 10 in the world. We had 2 of them in our basement. So I went into those guys when I knew a little bit about programming. I said, I need you to do something They had no idea what I was talking about. And you go, these guys are running 2 Cray 1s, and they don't. So anyway, it was very interesting, and it was always been important to me. When I ran businesses, I was very careful to get those things installed and have people help people use them, and yeah, great.
It's for people of our age and all who lived through this. We'll always remember like the first time we had a VisitCalc spreadsheet or whatever spreadsheet
Yeah.
we had and saw the numbers change and ripple through when we
Yeah.
made something. That was magic. And
Yeah,
again,
it was.
People don't even consider that anymore.
I remember when at Westinghouse, you could ask for one later on, not at first, but later on, but you had to explain what you wanted it for. Well, nobody knew what a database was or VisitCalc was, so they couldn't explain what they wanted it for because they didn't even understand what it did, you know. But I remember writing little programs in DBase and putting on my punch list for the nuclear plants on there because the geeks downstairs at Westinghouse, if you gave them a change to your schedule, it was 6 weeks before you got an updated schedule. And you go, well, this is the end of the project. Stuff goes on and off the list in 1 week.
Yeah.
So I had my own DBase. I got a tech to enter all the data. And I remember they said, no, you can't do this. This is our scope. You can't do it. You can't do it. And I said, finally, I said, look, on a weekly basis, I will send you an ASCII file with all my DBase stuff. You guys can enter it into your mainframe, do whatever you want to do with it. And, after about 2 or 3 years, they had done nothing with it, but at least it got them off my back,
That's amazing. So about the little later then, the 3 things happened, I guess. The Growth Association wanted to do something with tech in Cleveland.
Yep.
Your son got admitted to Dartmouth, so you couldn't just be a freebie, a volunteer all the time. And you went to a meeting in Salt Lake City. Tell us about that. That's where.
I had left Cleveland Thermal, and they had given me a year's severance pay. So I really had some time to, even though the college bills were coming in, to think about things. So I volunteered to go work at the Growth Association at that time is what it was called. And they had this tech group they had started up, and they asked me would I kind of be the volunteer leader of that. So I did, and after I was there for a couple weeks, I got an invitation to go to Salt Lake City, and the guy in charge of this national group called me and said, here's the deal. You join the group. And I said, I don't have a budget. I don't have I can't join. He said, here's the deal. $150 to join. We will send you the airplane tickets to Salt Lake City. We will pay for your hotel at Salt Lake City. We'll pay for all the meals at Salt Lake City. And I said, done.
Yeah, really.
So I went out there and listened to, there were about 20 groups similar to NEOSA. And I just took about 14 pages of notes as to everything they were doing, and I came back and copied it. And after, 3 or 4 days there, I knew more than anybody else in Cleveland did, so nobody could argue with me. And that's the way it started.
And NEOSA started as Northeast Ohio Software Association, but that quickly evolved into, beyond software.
Yeah, it's more technology, really. It never really was just software. And I know that probably confused people, but by using the name NEOSA, I think most people forgot that it said Software Association. And many of these other associations had names like that weren't really. Most of the NEOSA members were technology consultants, So
I think one of your challenges was to convince the powers that be in the old guard that, maybe we didn't have pure technology companies that just, Silicon Valley types, but the progressives and the Jones Day and those companies were using technology, and that was all part of it.
Yeah, I think that happened a little later on. When we first started out, I think the main thing that I did that probably got people's attention more than anything else was we put together a directory of the IT and software, companies. And there were, I believe, over 2,000 companies listed in this directory. And then we printed out the directory in a fancy format. It looked real nice, big, thick. And, you'd go talk to somebody who didn't believe that, and you just plunk that down on the table. Here's this inch thick directory. And I would say, tell me which companies to take off this list, because here are 2,000 technology companies. And you're right. Later on, when we saw some numbers, we realized that 2 out of 3 of the technology employees in Northeast Ohio worked for non-technology companies. And I always remember reading a phrase back then that said that software is the lubricant for industry for the 21st century. So if you think of it like that, and you say, okay, well, the Cleveland Clinic's great, but they've got to, this is the armpit of the software of the world. No, you're not going to get any top people coming here in Northeast Ohio. And so you need to change that such that people want to go there, because software for the Cleveland Clinic or for Progressive, Progressive has used software incredible amount compared to other companies. So it's an important part of the future of these companies. How will they do the software? I look at Amazon today and I think they must have one hell of a good software group, because their stuff works so fast, is so well done. You get so much, and you go, well, that's software that's doing all that. Yeah.
At Neosa, you just kept coming up with new innovations. One of the early ones, you kind of challenged the 2 mayoral candidates in 2001.
Yeah.
Tell us a little about that with Ray Pierce and Jane Campbell.
Well, that night was an interesting night, because we had an event at the Science Center to bring about 1,000 people together, and it was students, and then technology companies had tables. We wanted technology students to know you don't have to go to Microsoft. You could stay here and work for these technology companies. So we had this event planned. And then somebody contacted me and said, well, we've got this debate between the mayor and who was she running against? Ray Pierce. Yeah, Ray Pierce. Would you be the moderator for it? And I said, sure, why not? So all of a sudden Neosa, which wasn't that big, had this 1,000-person thing going on at the Science Center. We got this, I go like, oh man, this is like too much. My staff is going like, are we nuts or what? What is this? So anyway, the thing is that worked so well, Dan, was that I wrote out questions that I was going to ask them and sent them to both of the candidates. And it got them to really have their staffs do some research on the answers to those questions about technology. Would you name a technology? We didn't call him czar. Maybe we did. I don't know. Would you name somebody? And both of them in the debate said yes. But later on, when I heard Jane Campbell or Ray talking, they would refer to this research that they had done about how important the software industry was and how important. So it was really a training session to get them to put it higher on the thing. And it worked really well. And I always felt, we had Jane Campbell's support in that industry. And I think the fact that we did that upset a lot of people. That what do they think they're doing? Doing that. What's that? That should be somebody else, not them.
So then Jane Campbell becomes the mayor, and Tim Mueller becomes the first tech czar, which he was called that. Yeah. And Tim and you and some of us noticed that City Hall had some of the crappiest, out-of-date computers around, and you came up with your adopted pewter. Tell us about that. Yeah,
that was really cool. Tim called me over to his office and he said, I've got this computer on my desk. And Tim is a technology guy, so he's accustomed to having fast, even back then, fast computers. He said, I turned this thing on and for 5 minutes, it's struggling to start up the Windows, So he said, these are just such junk. I can't do anything. So he said, what can you do to help? And I said, let me go back and think about this. I said, we're not like rolling in cash, so we just can't buy you computers and give them to you. So I had this idea, and I went back to him and I said, well, pass this by the mayor, see if she'll agree. So we said, if you donate $2,000, you will get a computer put in City Hall with the name of your company on it, or whatever. And so you will, it was called Adopt a Pewter, we called it. And you can get your name, and then we'll have a raffle for whose computer goes where. So we ended up getting, I think, about 20 or 25 computers, something like that. And so we had this raffle.
That was my biggest sale of that year.
Yeah, yeah. And the funniest part about that I remember is that I was telling my mother, I used to call my mother every day because she was by herself in East Hampton. And I told her about it. She said, that is such a good idea. That's a great idea. And I said, good. How about donating $2,000? She said, well, would you wait? Would you? So I finally got her to agree to donate $2,000. So she had a computer with her name on it. So we reach in at the Red Room at Mayor Campbell's office, reached in to had her pick the winner, and the winner is Cookingham's mom.
I remember yelling, fix, fix.
It was so funny.
Yeah.
And her nickname was Go-Go. And so the computer in the mayor's office was Go-Go, Cookingham's mom. And then at one point she came into Cleveland, and I said, well, you've got to meet the mayor. So we went over. Mayor wasn't there, but Tim was there. And at that point, I think Tim was her chief of staff, if I'm not mistaken. And we went to lunch, and my mother fell in love with Tim, and Tim acted like he fell in love with my mother. So it was really nice, and she always remembered him, and he always remembers her. So it was so nice. It worked so well.
That was fun. You know, you can't talk about Neosa without the Neosa Tech Thursdays at Great Lakes Brew.
Yeah.
That was what a group of people you brought together. No agendas, no speeches, just really good beer. And
that was so powerful. That was so powerful. And I know, if you think about it, if you remember, it was copied. So there was Cleveland Clicks, there was a bunch of other things that copied it. But the idea of having people just get together to talk is so powerful. And I'm not sure a lot of people understand how much good comes out of that. And I was so proud when we did that. It was so good. I remember one time Cindy came to one of those, and they were like, I mean, it's almost embarrassing. There were people like surrounding me that wanted to talk to me. They thought, I don't know, I could do something, which I couldn't. And she said, so she was standing next to me, and she said she got like pushed out of the way. She said, like you were a rock star or something. And she said, I am never coming to another one of those things. Yeah, it was funny. It was really cool, and that worked so well. And
perfect place, a lot of connections made, a lot of fun. I wish we had something like that now.
Well, that the power of, that was the power of Neosa. To me, was networking and people getting together. Yeah. I never felt I knew enough, nor would I lecture people. How do you start up your company? I would get people that had done it to talk about it, but we were never an educational organization that thought they would lecture these companies how to start up their own companies. That was up to them, but they could surely talk to each other and ask each other and share with each other how they had done it. And that was so exciting to do that, and to not be the lecturer about this is how we do it, which is what some of the not-for-profit helpers seem to be, wanting to teach everybody how to do it. And I'm not sure they're knowledgeable enough to really do that. So one other thing, too, I just want to mention is the importance of publicity and cranes. And the cranes,
Chris Thompson,
Shasta Clark, and I don't even remember the name of those reporters, but we
Stacklin,
had,
Jeff Stacklin.
yeah, Jeff Stacklin. Those people covered technology, and we did have a technology awards thing with them, but they paid so much attention that I think that is probably accomplished as much as anything else, was that publicity that people got about technology. And I think the universities paid attention to it and others paid attention to it. So don't want to leave that piece out.
No, and of course, when I was writing my Inside Business Tech column, I used the phrase entrepreneur, and you jumped in and turned into the boot camp. I was looking for my Join the Herd, Be an Entrepreneur t-shirt, but I couldn't find it. It's up there somewhere. Those were great, those boot camps.
The boot camps were, that copied from something they did at Silicon Valley. But the way we did it, I don't know if you remember this, but I thought about, so I got, people from Jones Day, CEOs from tech companies to come and talk, and it was on Saturday I've forgotten if it was 6 hours or something on Saturday. So it was like maybe 8 weekends in a row, and I'm thinking, okay, so I schedule all these important people to come. I got 20 participants, and it's a beautiful day for golf, and I got one guy, and I got Jones Day sitting there, So I thought, this is just really scary. So I thought, so these are startup companies learning how to do this, so they don't have a lot of money, so it'll cost you $800 to go to this boot camp. And if you have perfect attendance, your $800 will be returned to you. Wow.
Smart.
We had perfect attendance, which is what I really wanted. I really didn't want the $800. I just wanted them there so that we wouldn't be embarrassed, because so many people put so much time, their time into writing the curriculum for this thing. Yeah.
You were able to get people like that through the power of Neosa and your own leadership. I mean, that led to the CIO Symposium, for example.
Yeah.
Got big people there.
Yeah, we did. I mean, that was also a bit of a problem, because the poor CIOs of these big companies are just, don't want to come to Tech Thursday because they're going to get inundated by people trying to sell crap to them. And so, we did that CIO Symposium in a way that they wouldn't get barraged, that there were only very few vendors there, and that they could share amongst themselves some of their best practices. And it was great. It was great. And we actually got good sponsors, people paying good money to be there, to just be exposed to those CIOs. And it helped fund Neosa.
And, you had the Futures Forum when we were all down and depressed. You had the Funk Busters. I mean,
I'd forgotten about the Futures Forum. That was perhaps my favorite event. And at one point I went to the head of the Growth Association. I said, I'm talking about the future of everything, not software, everything. This is really your event. This really isn't, we don't talk about airports, but we had, the head of the airport and the head of this talk about, what does this look like 10 years from now? I thought it was so powerful. And the moderators we had were presidents of universities and Luis Proenza, and they just loved it. Wow, was that powerful or what? Yeah, I agree.
So often, especially with technology, we overestimate the next 5 years, but really underestimate the 10, 20 years in the future.
Yeah,
that really opened some eyes.
Yeah.
So now you're president of CRITA. Now you became the leader of that, and there's some reaching for it with COSI. Yeah. And the funding is going away to Nortec. And tell us a little about that.
Yeah. Well, actually, I was in Europe when that happened. I think I was in Mallorca. But we had, and people at this national organization, Council CRITA, you're right, Dan, they had told me when I said, well, the state has offered us some funding to help us do what we're doing. And they said, don't take it. It's like drugs. Do not take it. It will be pulled away from you. So it was just allowed us to do so many things that we weren't worried about making money on because we had enough funding that I really wasn't that worried about it. But I think that they didn't like, a lot of our mode was more of a trade association, people talking to each other. They wanted something that was more, I'm going to help startup companies. They liked our angel network we had
Yeah,
to help
with
fund.
other
They liked that.
project beers.
But when I said, well, we've got this great networking event where people go drink beer together, it's like, well, we're not going to fund something like that. And the truth is that was more powerful than probably anything else. But so they didn't love that, and so the funding was pulled, and I think it virtually it went to Nortec first, then went to Jumpstart, I think. Um,
So you continued to run Neosa
yeah,
through Cozy for a couple more years, and then
yeah.
you know,
Then I was promoted to manager in Cozy, and that's what I loved about Neosa. I had always been a project manager, president of a company, of this, and at Neosa I was like sending out all emails myself. I figured out you no longer have a secretary. When you say the meeting's going to be on Wednesday, it better be Wednesday, goddammit, because otherwise they're going to show up at the wrong place. And I had always had checkers that checked everything I wrote, so I made a few of those mistakes, and I said, "Whoops, got to change the way I do that."
so what should people know, from your experience here in Cleveland and in the tech industry in general? What should people know that they might not know about technology and IT business?
Well, I think the connection of people to people, people working. We also had a CEO forum, that these guys got together, I think every other month, and I had about 10 or 12 CEOs that got together and ask each other questions. I mean, I remember one of the early stage CEOs asking somebody else, we're really struggling with our manual on how to deal with people, and he said, well, I'll send you a copy of mine, you can use it. You go, man, that was like $80,000 worth of crap he just gave the guy. And they talked about, I remember when AJ Highland talked to us about getting ready to go public and what that cost them and how they did it and what their thought process was. For smaller companies, for Phil Alexander and some of these other guys, to hear this is just invaluable. And then they knew each other, so they could call each other for personal questions about certain things. Boy, that connecting of people is, in my opinion, the single most valuable thing you can do for any.
And I mean, you had so many accomplishments with Neosa, some more successful than others,
Yep.
but you kept throwing things out there, and
Yeah.
you
remember,
busted
I
the
remember
funk.
my staff at one point, I said, well, let's just do this. They said, we don't want any more new ideas. Forget new ideas. We're just doing.
You busted the funk, man. And your staff, we
Yeah.
sometime we'll talk about the Neosa babes, but that's
Yeah.
for another
Yeah.
video problem. But
Yeah,
so,
that's probably not politically correct anymore,
yeah,
Dan.
yeah. So you, audience, you can see how important, why Jim has been called the Godfather of technology in Cleveland, many other things, And I remember at your retirement party, there was just when we all put white beards on, and
Yeah,
it was just a
wasn't that
blast. So
cool?
you're so well respected. You did so much in a pretty short amount of time here that really
Yeah.
transitioned Cleveland tech history, and we appreciate that. Can't wait to catch up with you next time you're in Cleveland.
Okay.
I hope your better half, Cindy, will be coming with you. Anything
Yeah.
you want to add for your fans here in Cleveland?
No. I just want to thank everybody, and I wish I could thank the Tim Reynolds and the AJ Highlands and Steve Potashes, and I mean there are a lot of serious successes in the technology community in Cleveland. And I don't know, Cleveland seems to like to beat itself up, but boy, oh boy, there are some tremendous successes. Steve Potash and Overdrive, my goodness.
Yeah.
And that story, it didn't work, it didn't work, and then it worked. And he just stuck with it. I'm sure very difficult. And now, go to any library to get any book to listen to, and it's overdrive.
And you
I
see
am so
Steve,
proud of him.
Steve on one end of the spectrum, just focus. Then you see a Ron Copper, who's
Yeah.
serial entrepreneur, 16 different areas, and it's just great. And they were all part of NEOSA, all part of this. So.
They were, and Ron did a lot. Tim Reynolds, did a tremendous job with NEOSA. And it's so funny. When we joined Cozy, we kind of said, "Oh boy, this would be," and a few years later, he was the head of Cozy.
Yeah.
And you go, okay, so we won.
Well, Jim, great to see you again. Great to talk to you.
Thanks,
We're going to talk to all these guys with Cleveland Tech history, and we'll catch up with you again.
Okay.
Great
Thanks a lot. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.